When we say religion is a part of colonization and a tool used by colonizer and slave traders to enslave African, even not only African, even other part of the world, it is because we learn it from different perspectives. There is a video here. It was recorded in Ghana, where the church was used as a store for slaves. Slaves were kept under the church, where the people are being brainwashed in the church about the religion or about the Christianity. That is the reason why we say that the religion and the slave trade are the same company. They are working for the same goal. Because if they were not working for the same goal, there is no reason that the church pastor can allow the slave traders to keep a slave under the church. Watch the video.
Crying for.
So this was the Saint Francis Xavier Catholic Church, built on top of the dungeon that was introduced by the Portuguese during their 4 years occupancy. And the church was built on top of the dungeon. So previously the church was very big. It occupies all those areas. You could see the pillars of the church outside.
While people were underneath crying for help, the people were here worshiping God.
Yes, in Cape Coast Castle, whilst the Anglican church was going on, the slaves were in the dungeon. And they could hear their sound. The church of the propagation of the gospel. For their own gains. Trading with the local people. They're trading in gold, in gunpowder, shinap, whiskey, testers, all those goods.
Because I don't know or understand why they were worshiping God, but they couldn't preach to these slave masters to stop what they are doing.
Yes, that's the major problem that we have now. That why should they have the slave and the dungeons were built beneath the church, which doesn't speak good about the church. And also many of the plantations also belongs to the churches as well. So African and slaves happens to be those who used to work on the plantation. So religion is a very whole subject matter.
I think religion
take a second look at
went hand in hand with slavery.
Exactly. Because initially when they came for discovery of trade routes and stuff, but they later began to engage in slave trading. Yes. And our people really suffered. Out of these slave trading activities. Yes. So this was a church built by the Portuguese. But the new items in the church here now was brought in by our former president, the late Professor Mills. When he became the president, he was using the church as a prayer room before he died in 2012, July 24. So we are still keeping all these items in the church in remembrance of our former leader, the late Professor John Evans Mills. So this is the concrete floor of the church.
The original
concrete floor. There used to be wooden carving. You could see the patterns. But later, after the castle was declared a museum, according to UNESCO, they need to remove everything from here so that the concrete floor originally
will last longer.
And also could be seen by visitors. That's why we have the section of the floor being this way. So all these places were dungeons. You see, the church occupies all these places. You see this ventilation unit here. These were dungeons where the African slaves were kept. You see, all those places were ventilation. Please come to this side. All these were ventilations to dungeons. But currently, the dungeons, the walls are falling apart. So we can't go there to have a look at that place. If not, I will take you there to see. So these were all ventilations where African slaves were. To the Christiansborg Castle. So this was where the African slaves were being kept. So 60 of them were kept in this room. 60 was also being kept here. In chains and shackles. This is where they kept the African slaves.
60 here, 60 there.
Making 120 African slaves. The male slaves were being kept here. The food they ate was dropped from here. And they were being fed
from this hole?
From this hole here. This was the service area. They could also see the sky from here. And they were being fed once in a day. Whenever the food was dropped, it becomes survival of the fittest. They need to fight among themselves to feed.
Like animals.
Like animals, in chains and shackles. This was their source of ventilation, where air comes into the dungeon. So the floor was originally very sandy and flawed. So this is how the floor used to be. A very sandy.
So this is the original
yeah,
floor.
original floor. Sandy and raw floor. So this gutter here was a latrine where they do their men's stuff. They fufu, they urinate, they do all their stuffs right here in the dungeon. So they were being kept here for maximum of 6 months because it took the slave ship 2 to 3 months to get to the Danish West Indies, which is currently known as the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Thomas, St. John, and St. Croix. The islands were colonized by the Danish in different times. The first one happens to be St. Thomas. That was in 1672. And the second one happens to be St. John. That was in 1718. The last one was St. Croix. That was in 1733. So the African enslaved were being taken there to go and work on the plantation. Sugar, also known as white gold, was a very expensive commodity at that time. So how do they get people to work on the plantation? People who used to work on the plantation earlier got tuberculosis and chickenpox, and many of them died. So after they begin to engage the African enslaved, they realized due to our immune system, many of them were able to sustain working on the plantation. That's why many of them were Africans that were being taken there to work on the plantation. So this is for the male African enslaved.
So 60 people will stay here for average of how many months?
6 months.
6 months.
So it all depends on when the ship arrived. Because if you're being brought into this castle and the ship is available, they will take you away. If not, you have to wait until the ship comes before they'll move them away. Some of them also died here in chains and shackles. Some of them also got infections like the chickenpox. When the slave died here, they put their corpse in a sack. Their dead bodies were put in a sack. Cannon balls, the round metallic cannon balls. If you go to the cable castle, you see many of them. They were being added to the sack to make it heavier, so that when they throw them into the sea, they will sink into the water and remain underwater, so they could be consumed by the fish. So this is where they were kept. And many of them were coming from different ethnic backgrounds, so communication was a challenge even among the African slaves. And this was the market center established by the Danish. The weaker slaves being kept here, the stronger ones were also being kept here. So let's go to the female slaves being kept here. The stronger ones were also being kept here. So let's go